right, it's Tuesday night, and that means another episode of Goal Horns and Fight Songs. I'm Mike. With me, as always, is Wes. How was your Labor Day weekend, Wes?
It was good up until last night, and then baby decided to wake up every 50, 55 minutes last night, so top notch sleep on the night you got to go back to work. It was great.
Yeah, well, you know what? I did more labor than I planned on doing. Helped out my brother's girlfriend's uncle just stand at the state fair, and worked about a 10-hour day serving food. So if I randomly start yelling out chicken or brisket or hot hen, just don't mind me. I just did it for about 10 hours yesterday. So far, so good throughout the day, but you never know. I was dreaming about that last night.
Fun
But
times. Fun
State Fair,
times.
State Fair in Minnesota is the unofficial end to summer, and we're getting into fall. Fall means football. Football means we're close to hockey,
We
and that's the
are
best part of it.
we are 4 weeks away now.
We're on team number
5.
5, so yeah, 4 weeks away because we have the preview session right before, so 4 weeks away.
Yeah, from the exhibition slash. What did we call it? Is that really week 0? I guess kind of like in
I guess it
football,
would be, yeah, I
where
guess it would
there's
be week 0.
few people playing actual meaningful games, and week 1 is when everybody's playing full games, I guess.
Yeah, some teams are playing exhibitions, some teams are playing real games. No one really knows. So it's kind of the odd week, but at that point, who cares? Hockey's back.
Hockey is
It,
getting close. I mean, I think we're only a couple, like 2 weeks, 15 days away from preseason NHL hockey, I think. So we're right in that butter zone of getting close.
mm-hmm. We can smell it. We can't quite taste it, but we can smell it. It's in the oven. And you can smell that bread bacon.
All right, well, that's probably time that we jump into probably the second. Is it second most? Maybe third most important thing in Omaha behind steaks and College World Series of baseball.
Well, I mean, they do promote their breweries up here a lot, but yeah, I'd probably say third most important thing in Omaha behind their steaks in the College World Series, and that would be their hockey team.
For the University of Nebraska, Omaha. They are a confusing group of fellers.
I
And they are once again this season. I don't know where I put my lists.
I think out of all the teams in the NCHC over the past, 4 or 5 years, they really are the most confusing team. We can always slot most teams where they finish. It's a pretty good. There's a pretty good barometer of where they are, and then Omaha just comes in and nobody has any idea what they're going to do. They're the wild card. They could finish last. They finished third last year. They could win the conference. Like, nobody knows what this team is doing. I don't even think they know what they're doing.
I generally don't like the way they schedule their non-conference, but I don't mind it so much this year. We'll get there when we actually talk about like their non-conference schedule, but I think this year it might actually be a beneficial non-conference schedule for them.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I agree.
I mean, like, yeah, they finished third last year, but they were not a guaranteed team to make the NCAA tournament. However, you know who was? The team that finished fourth in the conference, St. Cloud State.
Mm-hmm.
They did not need to win the conference tournament last year to, I think, be in the tournament. However, Omaha was gonna need to win the tournament if they were gonna have any shot at making the conference or the national title tournament last year. And that's just
Yeah, that
due partly to the way they schedule their non-conference.
that was their only shot in their non-conference last year. When we talked about them, it was just so soft. it was just unbelievably soft. And it was like, okay, sweet, you guys did this and you played well in the conference, but you got to show us more. And they did not, and they didn't get in. Um, and they didn't even, did they make the, no, they didn't make the Frozen face off, did they? No,
No,
they didn't.
they lost to North Dakota in Game 3. They went to Game 3 and lost. They I think they're the only school left that has not yet made it to Minneapolis for the Frozen Face Off. Everybody else,
Minneapolis, St. Paul, because the first few years it
yeah.
was in Minneapolis, but now it's in St. Paul.
Either way, they haven't made it there to play in the tournament. So maybe things will turn around for them. Maybe not. Who knows? They do come with a pretty experienced team. I think they're right there with Duluth, who we talked about last week. I think as far as like a big sophomore class, I think you guys have had 9, if I
I
remember right.
believe it was 9, yes.
Nebraska's coming in with 10 sophomores, 3 incoming freshmen, 3 juniors, 4 seniors, and 6 grad students. They had 3 outgoing in the transfer portal, 5 incoming guys. Lots, kind of quite a bit of change up in the lineup for eighth year. What will be 8th year head coach there, uh, who I literally thought had been there a shorter period of time, but no, he's been there 8 years. This will be his 8th season for Mike Gabinet.
Yeah, and there, I think I was looking, I'm just double checking my math here. Yeah, Omaha, they're tied for the second most incoming players from the portal with Miami with 5. North Dakota, they had to get basically their whole blue line back. Uh, but it's a weird combination of sophomores and then grad students when pretty much half your team is sophomores. There is experience and they had success last year. I think that's a good thing. And you only have 3 freshmen coming in, but it's just most teams that have consistent success have a balance of freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, and grad students. Usually only have a couple of grad students. This team has a lot of, for lack of a better term, a lot of old farts on the team that have been around the block. And they're names that watching the NCHC that you know, um,
Yeah, but I
like
think,
Nolan Sullivan.
and it'll be interesting to see what happens next year because I think next year is next season will be the last season for the 5th year eligibility just straight out of the gate. The erosion of the COVID year, not counting toward against anybody. So next year will be the final season for that. And it'll be interesting to see if we continue this trend of grad students playing. I don't think we will, just because like you have to have that legit redshirt season again.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we'll see quite as many grad students as we've seen the last few years. I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing to have. We see it in pretty much every sport that a good mix of experienced guys and youth produce championship teams. And even with Denver last year, there was some experienced guys on that team. There was some freshmen like Carter Mazer who came in and played really well in a freshman season, who helped that team win a national title. And if Omaha can build on what they did last year with their non-conference schedule, I think that they might have a better shot at making at least the NCAA tournament come the end of the year.
I think with their roster, especially in that big class of sophomores, um, like Cozy, he's going to be the most integral part of their success. But you have that amount of sophomores, the other 9 sophomores that they have, they've all played with him, they all know him. And then the same with the other experienced guys. There's that level of comfort. people will talk about the sophomore slump. I don't think he's necessarily going to have that because he has offensive firepower in front of him. And then the team behind him with only three freshmen, they know his tendencies and how he wants them to play because coaching's one part of it. But then I think, and this would actually be a good question to ask Trevor, is how much of it is coaching and how much of it is what you want as a goalie for how the system is played defensively. Like, do you as a goalie have to adapt, or do the players adapt to you?
I feel like it's kind of coaching based. Like, I mean, goalies are going to play the way goalies are going to play. I think that they rely on instinct and how they're most comfortable playing, and you see that across uh, all all levels of hockey. But we really kind of saw it with Emberko last year. Like, I don't necessarily know that Colorado was expecting him to play either as well as he did or as in much control as he did, and it took a while for their defense to really put everything together, but we saw that come together at the end of the year, and they picked up some really big wins at the end of the season that they can build on. And there is a familiarity rule that I think comes from the play in your defensive zone. Like, yeah, you can want to pressure guys, but you have to have confidence in your goalie to know that, okay, he knows when to hold pucks and when to play pucks. We know when to kind of cheat a little bit and start moving up the boards. Like, I think that comes with familiarity. I do think that there's also a type of defense that coaches want to play, but that comes with what kind of players they recruit too. And are those players the type of players who can play that defense, or are they willing to let their players play their game? Like, we've seen Western kind of transfer from this really big, heavy defensive team that was always putting guys, trying to put everybody up against the glass and keep everybody wide, to a defense that kind of is happily jumping in on the offense and might get caught cheating every once in a while, but they're playing that risk reward. Like, the reward's the goal at the end of the ice. The risk is you might end up with kind of a 2-on-1 or be a little bit outmanned in the defensive zone, but trust your goalie enough to know that he's going to make that first save at least. And then how do you play rebounds? Do you have a goaltender who gives up a lot of juicy rebounds and the puck bounces off of, or do you have a guy who's Velcro and the puck lands in the safety zone and he's going to get a lot of whistles? So I think that kind of stuff comes with just the familiarity of playing with those guys for a couple seasons or practicing with them and getting to know and understand their tendencies. And I think that could be the thing that we goaltenders tend to struggle with coming into their sophomore season. And I hope Lacosi doesn't have that, because he came on pretty strong in the second half of the season for Omaha last year. But it's just as much the other team kind of understands the goalie better too. There's more film on him now. They see areas, like, you kind of see that in the first series with against a goalie, and then if they play a second series later in the year, like, guys are kind of willing to jump into more spots a little bit that second series because they understand the goalie and how he plays and where there's some openings. So I think that's the biggest transition from freshman goalie to sophomore goalie as it appears, because we've seen a lot of guys come in and be lights out that freshman year, but for whatever reason, that second season is not the same thing. But I did have Lacosi as one of my key return guys. He split time with Kucharski last year. They each played 20 games. Lacosi also played for.
He's
Uh,
hang on, give me 2 seconds.
it's
Slovakia.
yeah.
That's where he's.
I was gonna say it was Eastern Europe somewhere.
I knew it was
Uh,
Eastern Europe. I was like, I have him up right now. I'm looking at him.
I was like, is he? He's not all the way north, but he's close to north. I mean, it's not Latvia, but it's over there somewhere. I just couldn't get to Slovakia. But yeah, he played for Team Slovakia in the World Juniors. Um, Kind of struggled a little bit. I don't know that that's necessarily on him or just the remaining talent that made that team up. He had 11-6-1 record with 2 shutouts as a freshman. Really not a bad record. He did get outshined a little bit by what
Very
Emberko was
cool.
able to do with Colorado College, but really, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Lacosi and UNO had a better season overall. But the talk of the year last year was all about what Umberko was able to do. So maybe he needs to put some of that to rest and say that show that he is up there as a talent, and we could see another battle between him and Umberko and Cozy for who's the top young goalie in the NCHC with quite a few years left between them to play.
And I think that battle, Umberko got the more of the spotlight because he was basically playing every single night. That was the big difference. Where like Cozy, he was not the number one goalie uh, at Omaha. Where Umberko, it's like, okay, well, yeah, we know who's going to play every single night. Uh, really quick, going back to the 2-on-1s if the defense pinches, that was kind of why I brought up the coaching versus the players and knowing your goalie, because my brother as a goalie, he has a preference on how he wants his defense to play. Um, and each goalie might play differently. You just see a lot in the NHL where the guy just stands in the middle and tries to lay down and block the pass and figure out the shot, but it doesn't make quite as much sense. Um, as you were talking though, uh, one of the things that Omaha, I think they can improve on, and I think they might with their experience, is their goals scored. So yeah, they finished third in the conference, but they finished fifth in goals for. They only scored 109, and only, but you had Denver with 150, Western 148, St. Cloud 133, North Dakota 127. But they're all their defense. They were kind of right in the middle too. Denver only gave up 86, but then St. Cloud 95. Actually, they were third, and then Omaha 97. So their defense, I think, is and their goaltending was the biggest part of their success last year. And if they can score more goals and keep up that defensive prowess with the talent that they brought back, that'll be perfect for them.
Yeah, I think they are a little bit worried about what they can do offensively. They did lose Cameron Berg. He transfers to North Dakota. He had 70. Nope, he had. Hang on, let me do. He had 47 points in 74 games played with Omaha last year. He had 10 goals, 14 assists. They do, however, get their leading point getter back who had 34 points and leading goal scorer with 18 goals, and that's Jack Randall, who will come back for a fifth year. He played 1 year at Michigan before returning to the USHL, and this will actually be his fourth season with Omaha. So they do have some of that offense coming back. They did lose number 2 in points, Tyler Weiss, who had 27, 6 goals, 21 assists after playing 5 seasons with Nebraska. They also lose Johnny Tykonic, who was third in points last year on 8 goals, 8 assists for 16 points. No, 18 assists and 8 goals. That's can't read my own handwriting. He played 5 seasons in the NCHC, 2 at North Dakota, and 3 at Nebraska Omaha. And recently signed with the Growlers out of the ECHL. So they do lose some offense, but they do have the number one guy coming back who's going to be a little bit more experienced. Like I said, I think their schedule is going to make them a little more competitive. They won't have to necessarily rely so much on the NCHC schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that will benefit them as well. Let me just pull that up here. This one, right? Yeah, there we go. So we'll jump over and look at their schedule here. First game of the season is an exhibition game against a completely different Minnesota State that we're used to seeing, as the coach and most of the players have since transferred to Wisconsin. So I don't know that this will be a true test, other than the fact that it's an exhibition game. So how much of it were we really going to see?
Mm-hmm.
But I do think sometimes exhibition games can tell us a little bit about the team, especially when it's against a division, another NCAA division opponent. You at least get a look at the young guys who they might not expect to see a whole lot of ice time, but you get a preseason look at them. And so we still might get that. Unfortunately, it's at Minnesota State, so we won't see this on NCHC TV. But it'll be interesting to see the numbers and check the reports on this one.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting. I think it's good for Mankato, and that's just how we say it here. But they, for the Mavericks, it's good for them to kind of get a feel and gel a little bit. Good for Omaha to get a little of the rust off, and then I don't know how do they do it every single year where they just have a stretch of home games to start the year. It seems like every single year they're at home and they start that off with Niagara.
Yeah, I don't know. They do have an incredible stretch of home games yet again this year. I mean, they are playing
They have 8 straight at home.
into deep into November at home.
It
So
something doesn't seem right there. Like there is something that's going on that they
maybe
just schedule it that
maybe
way.
everybody just wants steak, and they're like, "Where can we get steak? Omaha. Where are we scheduling our games? At Omaha because we want steak." I don't know what else it could be, but yeah, no, they somehow manage. But that also means that you're on the road a lot at the end of the year, and
Hmm.
maybe that's a ploy by the AD and the coaching staff that they want to schedule the end of their year on the road because you're going to be playing in neutral sites or you're going to be playing, a lot of away games, not necessarily away in the sense that like you're at the opposing team's barn, but you're not going to be at home in the later half of the season, and to get a feel for that over an extended period might be something that the coaching staff wants, or to try and push. If you can make the NCAA tournament, make it make it comfortable to be uncomfortable and to be away from home, but and maybe get off to a fast start by being at home and building that. So I don't know if it's a benefit or not. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I mean, they again, Omaha generally somehow for some reason manages to fiddle in the middle as far as
Hmm.
like where their record is, and I don't know that this benefits them or hurts them. So it's fun to watch and see.
Yeah, they're I don't know either. And you bring up a good point. It could be a ploy, or it's they just figured nobody's gonna want to come to Omaha in the winter because it seems like dead space. So
I would probably
fall.
I'd probably much rather go to Nebraska in the winter than I don't know like Denver, Colorado College, Alaska,
I wouldn't want to go to Alaska.
New
Colorado,
York.
Colorado College in Denver, that would be pretty. Duluth is pretty in the winter.
Yeah, I'm not worried
Grand
about things
Forks,
being pretty. I'm worried about things being miserable and being dumped on in snow and potentially not getting out of there when you're supposed to. Yeah, North Dakota is another one that I'm not
yeah,
really excited
that's
to play in the middle of winter.
see in Duluth we don't have to worry about the wind. Grand Forks, North Dakota, yeah, that wind just does not care. It doesn't care about you. At least the snow they can. We're prepared for the snow typically, not always, but typically. Um, North Dakota, you can't fix
All
that wind there.
right.
But
Well,
anyway,
let's see. So
um, yes,
they invite Niagara to start the regular season off. Friday, Saturday, set October 13th and 14th. They remain at home for the rest of October, welcoming Ohio State of the Big Ten. They will play an NCHC series in the middle of their off or non-conference schedule. Then it's LIU. Their first trip is to Denver. Ooh, that's an interesting home and away split there with Augustana Friday and Saturday. Going from Nebraska to South Dakota. What is the distance between those two?
not that far.
I just want to see
Um,
something. Mm,
Omaha to Sioux Falls is probably only a couple hours.
really?
Yes.
I, it's only 2 hours and 45 minutes. So it's actually
Yeah.
close. It's closer between those two schools than it is between Western and Miami.
So going back just a little in their schedule, after the Augustana, or like going back from Augustana, the Niagara, they tend to open up with an NCHC school. I believe the last couple of years that they've opened up with North Dakota, or within the first two series, and they've given North Dakota a decent run. North Dakota, I think, has swept the series, and this is just me not looking things up. But they weren't blowouts. And then Ohio State coming to town. Ohio State was an NCAA tournament team last year, so that that's one of the schools that them scheduling them non-conference will help them in their standings, especially if they can at least split with them, if not sweep them at home at Baxter Arena. Because Ohio State, they built a snowman on Harvard, the number 2 seed, in the first round of the NC or of the Frozen Four. So that's kind of an interesting start to the season. It's not quite a cupcake with Niagara. And then you have a team, I don't know any of the turnover that Ohio State had, how that team is going to look this year, but a team that had success last year in the NCAA tournament coming into your arena, that's a tougher matchup than maybe 2, 3 years ago. And then starting your conference off with Western Michigan, uh, that's a team that, of course, we'll talk about, but they're a pretty scary team.
It'll be interesting to see. And we'll talk about it more when we get there. I do like some of what they did in the offseason. They do lose a lot of offensive prowess, but I think
Mm-hmm.
they were able to fill the holes left quite well. And it'll be interesting to see who is able to step up. I mean, this is a team that has in the last 2 years produced the nation's leading goal scorer last year, pulling ties with Adam Fantilli out of Michigan, but Ethan Frank and Jason Poland each putting up 25 plus goals uh, and leading the nation in goals for an extended periods of time. I, I think there are definitely some players on the roster who are capable of having that kind of offensive explosion and stepping up big, even if one of those guys may be a transfer or an incoming freshman. I think there's definitely eyes are going to have to once again be on Kalamazoo and Western Michigan and see just what kind of team uh, Pat Frischweiler is able to put on the ice. But yeah, it's going to be a rough start. It's going to be a big series because Nebraska and Western always play each other hard. Last year we saw a pretty exciting 13 goal game that flip flopped
Mm-hmm.
big periods, and it came down to I think one goal. It might even have ended up being like an overtime game or a last minute goal that put Nebraska on top in that one. But
Yeah,
and it's a developing rivalry, which kind of plays into next year when these two teams will be part of that East Coast or that easternmost NCHC pod that we're seeing.
yeah, the
Uh,
Eastern Division or whatever. Um, yeah, and then as far as the schedule goes, I like how they broke up the couple NCHC with Long Island. They're
they're still an up and on the rise
yeah, they're
team.
still up. Yeah, they're probably what, fourth year in, something like that. They're only a few years in, and then Denver. But then I don't know if you noticed on the website. It's not a TV thing, but they have the Augustana game at home listed as NCHC, which I found hilarious. Um,
Yeah, I think that's just potentially like coverage. It'll be on NCHC TV.
Well, see, I don't think so because all the other home games, non-conference, aren't listed as NCHC. They just kind of missed
That's
that
true.
one.
Maybe,
Uh,
maybe that was an NCHC series last year and they just copy and pasted wrong. I don't know.
it could be, but so Long Island and then Augustana, them being their a first-year Division One program, that that's okay. That's part of the weaker non-conference schedule that they have. Um, UMD St. Cloud, but then the interesting one, they didn't list the teams, but I did
Uh,
look
yeah, the
at
teams are going to
Arizona.
be UMass Lowell, Harvard,
Yeah,
Omaha, and Arizona State. So they will get to potentially see incoming conference opponent Arizona State, depending on how the bracket shapes up for that one.
you stepped on my touchdown call because I said I was going to say I looked at the Arizona State website, and you have UMass Lowell, a number two seed in Harvard from last year's NCAA tournament, Omaha, and then wow,
Future
the
conference
host.
opponent.
So yeah, future conference opponent. So that's January 5th and 6th. And I think that will actually be a pretty interesting tournament. Lowell, they're a team that kind of goes up and down. Um, they they'll have success and then they'll bottom out and then they'll have success again. And it's not over long periods of time. It's just you never know. They're kind of like Omaha. You never know what you're going to get. Harvard being a number two seed last year, again, don't know a lot about them because we don't pay attention to their conference or that team. But I feel like they're going to be a very good team. And then Arizona State, we've talked about them a decent amount just because a lot of NCHC teams are playing them this year and they're going to be part of the conference next year. And they're another one kind of like an Omaha. You never really quite know what you're going to get. I would put them more of like let's say they're right now they're closer to Colorado College where they're on the rise, but they play an independent schedule, so you never really can gauge where they are. So I think that tournament's going to be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, I like the list of teams there. I think there's a good mix of kind of East Coast, West Coast. Yeah, I know it's ironic to say Omaha's West Coast, but really in the grand scheme of college hockey, they are one of the more Western teams. And you've got two from out east, clearly in UMass, Lowell, and Harvard. So a good mix there. Some different styles. Essentially, you've got at the current moment, what is it, three current conferences covered there, in independent school. Um,
Yeah, independent NCHC was Lowell Hockey East and then Harvard ECAC.
maybe I don't know. I'm just guessing here. They're not NCHC schools, so honestly, my attention span for them is
Hang on, we'll
15 out
figure
of
this out.
100.
So Lowell is Hockey East, and then Harvard is yeah ECAC. So technically, you have three conferences and one independent, even though ASU is NCHC for all intents and purposes. But um, yeah, so you kind of have the whole country covered in that tournament, which I think it'll make it a lot of fun.
Dude, they are choosing an absolute gauntlet for the second half of the season. They play an all NCHC second half of the season.
Mm-hmm. And I mean,
Just
at this point,
ugh.
we'll know kind of what North Dakota is, but then Denver, St. Cloud, UMD, and Western. back to back to back to back. That's oh, and it's and it's not even that they have consecutive series home or away. It's away, home, away, home, away, home, away, home. They
Yeah.
just there's no consistency to it other than the fact of well, we're on the road this weekend and we're at home and we're on the road. I think that's going to be a grueling part of that schedule just with all the travel.
I will say, if you can be successful with this schedule, like Nebraska might be a team that you have to pay attention to come late in the season.
Hmm. I will say with their travel schedule late in the year, Grand Forks isn't, I mean, it's kind of far, but it's not that bad. And then you're at home. And then once you're at home, you're only going to St. Cloud. And then you're back home. And then you're going to Kalamazoo, which, you know, not, I mean, it's Kalamazoo probably,
It's
between Kalamazoo and Oxford, those, I don't know which one's farther, but it's not like they're going and playing in Oxford and then going to play in Colorado Springs and then coming back home to play and then back out to Denver and then to Kalamazoo. Like the travel isn't that bad for them. It's just the home and away part that's kind of interesting.
yeah, it's just over 9 hours to Kalamazoo by car. It is. Let's pick the right Oxford.
Yeah, not
Uh,
Mississippi.
almost 11 hours to Oxford. So Omaha or Miami's slightly further than Kalamazoo.
Okay. But even then, they're going to fly there. So that flight is probably the same.
Yeah.
Um, that,
Well, it
it's
depends
not
on
that
where
bad.
you flying into for Oxford, because Oxford's it's small and it's in the southwest corner of Ohio. I don't know if they
Probably,
have a super
probably
close
Dayton.
airport.
Dayton's not that far from
Unless they're flying,
Oxford.
I mean, maybe they're flying somewhere into Indiana, because it's like Oxford's literally right on like the Indiana Ohio border.
Um, this is what we do.
Whereas if they're coming into Kalamazoo, they can fly right into Kalamazoo Battle Creek Airport, and then it's a 5 minute drive to the ice arena, basically.
Not, I picked the wrong Oxford. Oops.
Yeah, see, it's easy. Try insulting me. Why don't you do it?
Well, O- Oxford's only an hour from Dayton, so you could fly into Dayton, and that's only an hour ride. Because when I was there in Dayton last year, I saw the sign for Miami of Ohio. Like, oh, kind of close here. Um, so I don't think that's bad, that hour ride, depending on when you get in. But yeah, Kalamazoo, you know, I, I did it. It's not bad.
Well, yeah, you flew into Grand Rapids.
Yeah, I did fly into Grand Rapids, but even so, that's not a bad drive.
No, and that might, I mean, they might fly into Grand Rapids too, since that one's a slightly bigger airport. They might have more flights more regularly, but there is also, like, literally an airport in Kalamazoo.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Well,
all right. So
then,
first,
yeah.
first 10 games, they might have one of the tougher first 10 of what we've seen so far, and I have them coming out. Nope, that's wrong. Let me fix that. At 500. I do not have them sweeping Denver. Who did the math on? Oh no, I had them splitting. Okay, no, never mind. I have them at least slightly ahead. I have them at 6-4. I don't know how to read my own handwriting. I basically have them splitting everything but the Long Island series.
Mm, I don't have them sweeping Niagara.
I don't either. I have them splitting with Niagara. The only team I have them sweeping is
No, I
Long
said I
Island.
don't have. Learn to listen. I said I don't have them sweeping or splitting Niagara.
You
I have
said
them
sweeping the
sweeping it.
first time, so
Did I?
suck on that. Yeah.
No.
Once you learn to talk, and
Well,
my listening skills
well,
are fantastic.
we'll listen to the tape. I don't have them splitting with Niagara. I have them sweeping Niagara, splitting with Ohio State, swept by Western, sweeping Long Island, and swept by Denver.
Yeah, you 100% said sweep. Anyway, because I'm actually listening to it back.
Whatever.
Yeah, no, I have them splitting with Niagara,
It's
splitting with
Omaha.
Ohio
This is
State.
why I have this.
Yeah. Splitting with Western. I would much rather prefer Western sweep that series, but sweeping Long Island and then splitting with Denver, which the Denver one could go either way. I just don't. It'll be interesting to see where they're at in the series, but just based off like what we know about Denver at this point, I think they might be the most gettable that they've been in the last few years, and especially to catch them early. But we do know that Denver is a tough place to play. But I'm going to stick with the fact that they're 6-4 after their first 10 games. And they are just a split machine.
Yeah, let me see what I have again because I'm not writing it down.
Ow. Oh, you know what? We did do key departures, key
I have them
returns.
500. I have them 5-5
Six
after
and
the first
four.
10.
Let's see.
I just don't think because Denver is such a tough place to play, uh, and their teams they don't rebuild, they reload.
Yeah, but Denver's got a lot of work to do this year, more than I think they've had to do in a long time. And that biggest piece being the fact that they won't have Magnus back.
That is true. That is true. But at least they didn't have to rebuild their whole defensive core.
This is true.
So I just think it's tough going to Denver. So I have Denver sweeping them, but
Once
of course
again, man,
these are all preliminary.
Nebraska Omaha was such a hard read because of the way they schedule. Every non-conference game they have will be done by January 6th. They run an NCHC only gauntlet in the second half of the season of home and away games. I think it literally alternates the entire second half. It doesn't alternate the entire second half of the season.
Yes, that is what I was saying.
So
It's
if
home and away.
dude, I'll tell you what, if they're not dangerous this year, next year watch out because that team will have been putting in the adversity work.
They're I I'll say it right now. I do think they make the tournament this year. It might be preposterous, but
I think
I think they make the tournament this year.
I think it once again depends on just exactly what they're able to do in the NCHC. I think while they have scheduled a better non-conference schedule, they do have first-year Division One team in Augustana.
Mm-hmm.
They have a tournament which could help or hurt them depending on how strong those teams are entering that tournament. You've got LIU, who is another independent or an independent who we have seen struggle in recent years, still being a new team. Niagara is a team that can be good at times, but I think most recently we've seen them be a little bit of a warm up team per se. Uh, Ohio State could be a challenge, but again, like they played well in the NCHC last year. They really did. I mean, it was their second highest finish since or their highest finish since the inaugural season of the NCHC, where they finished third the first 2 years of the conference, and then they finished third last year. But I mean, they kind of struggle with big time games. They've still yet to make it to the Frozen Face Off. they stacked their second half of the second half of the season, so you're not even really getting a chance to kind of make those jump steps by playing a couple non-conference games. Maybe you just get, you get a good non-conference game in the middle of that to just break up the monotony of an NCHC season. But if any of these teams, if Colorado College plays and has an awful year, if Miami has an awful year, if North Dakota has an awful year, if Duluth plays subpar to what they're used to, like you're not really building a lot on that when that's your entire second half of your schedule. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah,
depends.
yeah.
Your schedule is extremely dependent on how strong the conference is this year. Maybe more so than in years past, where they might not have had as strong of a non-conference schedule, but they at least broke it up a little bit in the second half of the season.
I think I think with their non-conference, it's going to, because it, like you said, with Niagara, yeah, they pushed North Dakota a little bit, but not too much. Long Island still a startup. Augustana first year. If you sweep Ohio State, and then we don't know what the bracket looks like for the Desert Hockey Classic, but my guess is Arizona State might put themselves against Lowell and then Harvard, Omaha. But if you win that, and that's dependent on who you play, but if Omaha beats Harvard and then they beat either ASU or Lowell, whoever they play in the finals, I think that's going to help you, or well, I guess help Omaha in their standings if they finish in the top three of the conference like they did this year. And then, for the love of God, please just figure out how to make a way to St. Paul, unless you're playing UMD. Then no, I don't want you to make. But um, they have to sweep Ohio State, and I think they have to win their tournament in order to stand a chance. But I still do think they're going to make it.
I think
Just
they've got I think they've got an outside chance. But again, I think they really are putting a lot of importance on conference play again, which I don't hate. Honestly, I mean, with the way the NCHC has been one of the strongest conferences in the country since inception, like it's a smart bet on your conference. But
mm-hmm.
you're asking the conference to do a lot of work, especially when teams like North Dakota are pretty much in full rebuild mode. I mean, legitimately, like they rebuilt their entire
The last 2 years
back
now.
end. Um, you know, Colorado College is on the up. Miami has continued to struggle. Um, Denver may be a little bit less than what we've seen from them. St. Cloud State, I think, is a team that potentially seems to be the most um, has the most returning, and we'll see when we actually get into them a little bit more. But they seem to have had the least to do in the offseason. Western Michigan once again had to build their roster back with some early exits from the program for pro contracts. Some guys aging out. They bring in quite a few experienced guys. And it'd be interesting to see what that team looks like. Again, I have faith in what Firschweiler can do there. Nebraska, what can they really do? What are we going to get from? Is Colorado College as good as they look on paper? Is Denver as bad as they look on paper, or at least are there as many holes as it appears to be? Is North Dakota struggling as much as they are? Can Duluth return to some semblance of what they used to be? Like this year feels like it might be the most up for grabs in the NCHC, and that's the only thing I fear with the way they scheduled their second half of the season is it's you're only comparing yourself to your conference,
Mm-hmm.
and this could be the year that we see a little bit of shakeup in the NCHC, both in the conference and in the non-conference, and maybe only one or two teams make it out of the conference this year.
I think one thing that I was just thinking about was with Omaha and their non-conference, there are certain schools where with UMD it's easy because we have these in-state rivalries. We can schedule a Minnesota, we can schedule a Mankato, we can schedule a Bemidji who finishes well in the CCHA or WCHA or whatever conference they're playing. Um, we have these in-state rivalries that we both St. Cloud and UMD can schedule, and North Dakota as well because it's so close. But we also have that pedigree, and if Omaha doesn't make it to the tournament this year, if they finish well, then they're going to bring up their pedigree, and now some of the East Coast blue bloods will be like, "Oh, hey, we'll do this." But there's only so the problem with the scheduling and college hockey is there's only so many schools you can schedule non-conference that are tough opponents outside of pure in-state rivalries or whatever. So you're a lot of schools are going to have weak schedules, and you just have to go on what I mean. You kind of have to go on conference play for a lot of
Yeah.
these at-large bids. And that's just the problem because Boston College, even if they're down, they're going to want to schedule a Denver or they're going to want to schedule a Harvard or some non-conference that has done well because they're blue blood and that's going to make their money. So I think if Omaha finishes high again this year, and especially if they make the Frozen face off, that's going to help build them up and then they can get that stronger non-conference because other schools are going to be like, "Huh, so Omaha's on the rise, huh? Let's let's schedule them because they're starting to do pretty well."
I mean, we know that NCHC is going to beat the crap out of itself. I'm just hoping that, that I'm wrong and it's not potentially the team that wins the Penrose and the team that wins the Frozen Face-Off being the only two teams from the conference that make the tournament this year. But again, I could potentially see that with as many schedules and rosters as we've looked at and not really being 100% confident in a lot of these teams. Whereas last year it was so hard to predict some of the conference, and this year it feels like the really the hard spot to predict is the middle six,
Mm-hmm.
and to me the top one and two feel pretty confident. I don't think Denver's going to be in that top spot this year. I want to come out and say I think it's going to be Western Michigan is going to be in that top spot this year. And you could say it's a homer pick, but they're the one team I really haven't moved around too much after looking at everybody. And Miami's going to be in that bottom spot, and I haven't moved them around. I think the middle six is really kind of up for grabs, and there could be a lot of transition between 2 through 7 this year, and in really even potentially that top spot. But I think maybe if the NCAA gets two teams in the NCAA tournament and they only get two, it's going to be whoever wins the Penrose and whoever wins the automatic bid of winning the conference tournament at the end of the year.
I'm glad you corrected yourself because you said I can see movement. Like I don't know about the middle six, but I know the top two for sure. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? Um, I I think the way that there's only two is if the same team that wins the Penrose wins the Frozen Face Off. Um, I can see three. So if Western were to win the Penrose and then St. Cloud were to win the Frozen Face Off, then I can see a third team getting in. But I don't have as much confidence in this conference right now as I did the past couple of years. I just don't with what I've seen go on. And we typically, like last year, we typically watch all four games as they start time zone wise, and we'll have all four going on. And there's just something that's not quite as impressive as it has been. And I'm hoping that it's just kind of like a 2 year lull, like a 1 to 2 year lull, and then this year it picks back up, especially with a lot of freshmen, or well, freshmen from last year becoming sophomores this year, because there is a huge sophomore class on a lot of teams.
Yeah. And we might have a different opinion as far as like once seasons actually play and we actually start seeing these teams, but based on paper, I mean, it's hard to really pick clear spots at the moment. So, in October 3rd, we'll give our preseason ranks, our official, unofficial preseason ranks, because
Mm-hmm.
we're nobody special. But we'll put them out there anyway. See how people feel about them or not. I think that's going to wrap up this one. Next week we've got the rebuilding North Dakota Fighting Hawks. Um, is Bradbury on the hot seat? No, that's not his name.
Yes, it
Yes, it
is.
is. I don't know why when I was saying it, it sounded completely wrong in my head and it didn't feel right in my mouth. And I'm like,
Well, it
that's
sounds like a character created for a serial.
yeah. Is Bradbury on the hot seat there? Um, can North Dakota get back to some sort of prominence? It was last year a fluke finishing that low. We'll look at the team and see. And then after them, we've got three teams left. We got North Dakota, St. Cloud State, and Western Michigan. That'll wrap us up September. And then October 3rd will be the last show before games, at least the exhibition games, and we'll get our preseason predictions out. And then after that, it'll be, reviewing or talking about the weekends that were and predicting the next weekend. So we're right there at the. We can see it in the distance that hockey's not far away.
I got nothing else to add.
Well, good. Then I guess there's really, I mean, the last two couple things are just normal YouTubey things. Hit like, share, subscribe, whatever. Hit dislike. I don't care. Do what you want to do. Message us on Twitter/X, whatever it is. Our personals have been at the bottom of our pictures the whole show. The uh, page handle is scrolling across at the bottom like it does every show. The email address for the show is scrolling across the bottom now. So if you have another or you want another way of getting a hold of us, there's that one. It's goalhornsandfightsongs@gmail.com. All one word, smushed together, all the letters, all of it, the whole thing. Because I'm lazy and that worked. It fit. So, other than that, I think there's only one thing left to say, and that is Pucks on Net, good things happen like goal horns and fight songs. Until the next episode, we will see you later. Adios.